Usually your
So,
background noise is pretty good though, Eric.
Okay. Well, I'm driving now, so it might be a little different.
Warm.
Exciting.
It's good.
Yeah, it's warm today. Very warm. That's really all you need. You can have a cold day, but if there's some sun.
Yeah, we're getting random spring days, hot day, like random nice hot days. So it's kind of organizing my own exercise routine. Nice day, just out running, and then rain for 2 days, and then run again. So it's quite good.
Seems like spring is coming for everybody right now. You know, we're in our third spring this year so far. I think
Yeah.
Keith, you have the second spring is upon you.
this is we were getting December spring. There was no real January spring. But yeah, certainly we're getting February spring. So I'll take as many springs throughout the winter as I can get.
Absolutely.
Based on how hot it was here 2 days ago, I'm dreading the summer already.
Oh no, I like the heat. The heat can stay all
There's
year
heat and
round.
there's heat. No, and in July and August here it's too much. But
You can just spend all your days in the med, you know?
well, that's what I do. Yeah,
like
I just walked this really big long walk down the coast, down past the city and stuff, and every 10 minutes in July and August, you're just jumping in and back out, and your shorts are dry half a kilometer back up the road.
Yeah.
Friend is back.
Wildcat.
I'll just hang out here. So, what is on the agenda today?
Well, I think we should start with what we forgot the last time. Our regular listeners will think we've lost our minds. What are you sipping on?
Oh yeah, this is similar to what I had last week or the week before. This is coffee with a lot of cream, cinnamon, and ashwagandha. So
All right, yeah.
I got this mocha pot a while ago, and it makes really strong coffee. So I got to add a lot of cream because otherwise I don't normally get jittery on coffee, but for whatever reason that when I make it with that, it does give me a little bit of the jitters. So I cut it down, and it makes too much to have in one go. So I had some this morning, and then I'm finishing up this afternoon.
What about you, Eric? What are you drinking now since you're driving? Are you drinking and driving?
Yeah, I'm drinking some water kefir, which is I don't know if you probably had dairy kefir, where it's a culture that you apply to milk, and
Right.
It imbues it with all sorts of stuff. This is water kefir, so it's basically water and sugar, and then they add a kefir culture to it, and it digests all the sugar and that. I'm trying to keep caloric drinks to a minimum, so I'm in the middle of this potato diet right now, which I can talk about later after.
Yeah, well, I'm just drinking. What am I drinking? Earl Grey tea with lemon and obviously honey, and some sparkling water on the side, keeping it simple. Oh, goat's milk in it. Goat's milk in the tea.
Come on.
Sorry?
I said, come on. What are you doing to yourself?
So, tell us about the potato diet then. This is fascinating to me. What is a potato diet?
Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a quick, 5 to 7 day weight loss hack. I don't usually like to do quote unquote hacks, but this is one that actually has a lot of good science behind it, and it works really well for dropping, 5 to 10 pounds in a rapid amount of time while staying fairly well nourished. It's something that I do maybe once or twice a year. I've been doing it for a while. I use it as a bit of a reset. It's good after the holidays or something like that. If you just want to lean out real quick, it's not really a diet for, like, if you're a really fat guy, there are better ways to do it. But if you just have, 5 to 15 to 20 extra pounds hanging around and you want to try to see if you can lose them real quick, this is a good way to do it.
So people hearing this might hear
Go ahead.
potatoes, carbs. So can you explain how this is a diet? How does it work?
Yeah. So the point is, so there's something called the Satiety Index. This is a scientific term that nutritional researchers have used. They've studied different foods, and they basically used it to determine how much satiety a particular food provides to a person if they just eat that. And so one food that's really good for satiety is steak, because it's high in protein and it has some fat in it. Eggs are pretty good, but actually the food with the highest satiety index is actually a plain potato, just because. So it's relatively
Plain
calorie
white
dense,
potato, right?
So, yeah, plain white potato, like a russet Yukon Gold. Just when you hear the word potato, it's that kind of potato, not sweet potato, nothing like that. And the reason is that the potato it's very nutrient dense. So people think that it might be low in minerals and vitamins, but it's actually pretty high in magnesium. It's very high in potassium. It's even got some vitamin C in there. It has most of the things that you need to thrive, which is why it formed the basis of a lot of traditional cultures' diets, like whether it's the Incan Empire or later the Irish. And so and there's a unique thing about the potato. It's also fairly high in protein. It's not, it's nothing compared to animal foods, but if you eat enough potatoes, if you eat about 2,000 calories worth of white potatoes, you'll get over 50 grams of protein, which is enough to stave off most, as long as you're weight training, you'll pretty much avoid most muscle loss. That's sort of the bare minimum. And another thing about the protein in potatoes is that it's complete, which means it has all the amino acids that we need to get from our diets that we can't manufacture inside our own bodies. So those are called essential amino acids. Those are amino acids that you have to eat, you can't make. And potato has, if you eat, again, 2,000 calories of potatoes, I think you'll hit every single requirement for essential amino acids except for maybe leucine and methionine, and you'll just barely miss the requirement for those. So it's actually a quite nutritionally complete food to eat as a mono diet.
I think that would surprise a lot of people, wouldn't
Because
it?
of that amino acid profile in potatoes, is that one of the reasons why it seems to pair very well with meat, like with protein sources? Is there something to that, or am I just making that up in my head?
Well, that's the weird thing is that it actually, if you eat enough potatoes, you can actually get by with less meat, if that makes sense, because it's relatively rich in the essential amino acids. You could get by with eating a lot of potatoes, and if you don't have access to a lot of meat, but you eat a few ounces a day or a few eggs a day, that's actually a decent subsistence level diet. So, and potatoes do some interesting things. When you cook a potato and then you refrigerate the cooked potato, a portion of the starch converts to something called resistant starch, which is a starch that your body can no longer digest, and it makes it through your digestive tract to the colon, where it feeds your gut bacteria, and in turn they produce a beneficial short chain fatty acid called butyrate, which has a lot of really good effects on the body. It improves insulin resistance. It's actually an energy source for your colonic cells. What's another thing it does? Yeah, it gives really interesting and vivid dreams. So if you're eating a lot of cold potatoes, you'll get some good dreams. And it's just generally good for metabolic health, lowers blood lipids. And so, it's sort of like this weird confluence of things that make eating just plain potatoes really good for short-term weight loss, because it keeps you full. It supplies you with nutrients. It gives you, you know, a minimum amount of protein, enough to get by for a little while. And, you know, there are a lot of ways you can make potatoes pretty tasty. Really, the diet comes down to just eating potatoes with salt, any non-caloric or low, you know, non-fat, low sugar condiment like mustard or hot sauce. Those are all good. You could add vinegar, and you essentially just eat potatoes for every meal. Just eat as many as you can, eat until full, and you do that for 5 to 7 days. And most people I've you know, introduced this to or done it with, they lose anywhere from 5 to 10 pounds, and while maintaining good energy levels throughout. So, you know, and they can maintain their exercise habits and all that. So it's actually a really, really sustainable way. You know, it sounds like a crazy diet, but it's actually not too crazy.
So
Yeah.
if
So that's the gist of it.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I wasn't. Go ahead.
Well, my question was, so like, why does that lead to, if you're getting a adequate, I think I know the answer, but I want your answer. If you're getting like adequate calories and everything, as if you were eating just a variety of the other foods, why do you lose weight on this diet as opposed to going into like a caloric deficit to do so?
Well, that's the thing. So I think any diet, you know, any weight loss diet that works because you reduce calories. And you know, the best diets work by helping you spontaneously reduce calories. You know, they work by, you know, you don't feel like you're dieting. You don't feel like, you know, you're not hungry. You just don't eat enough calories as a sort of a spontaneous reaction to the diet. And you know, that's why a lot of people like keto or low carb or high protein, because that's sort of an easy way to reduce calories without actually trying. And potatoes are really the most satiety-inducing food that's, you know, at least by this one measurement. They really just make it hard to overeat. And again, the adequate protein and the high micronutrient load, all those contribute to the satiety, because, you know, your body senses everything that you're putting in your body. If you're just eating plain white sugar, it's probably going to increase your appetite because there aren't any nutrients coming in other than the sugar. Whereas with potatoes, you know, your body senses on some level that you're getting adequate protein and minerals and vitamins. And so you reduce calories spontaneously without even trying. So that's really how. Okay. Yeah. So another thing is that it's just boring, you know, eating one food over and over again. There's something to eating boring meals, whether it's, you know, just potatoes or just the same thing over and over again. That's really good for weight loss. You know, you see a lot of bodybuilders when they're cutting, they're just eating the same thing. You know, they're eating more variety, but it's the same variety. It's, you know, they're just eating chicken breast and broccoli and brown rice or something like that. And there's something about monotony that allows the body to lose weight a little quicker.
All right, a physiological thing that because it's the one thing coming in, it does that, as opposed to or including the psychological. If you're only eating one thing, you don't need to think about it. You're not going to be tempted. You're either eating potatoes or you're not. There's no like.
Essentially. Yeah. What you're doing is you're basically changing your dietary environment. You know what I mean? You're erecting these boundaries around what you eat. You're limiting all your options, and so it takes a lot of willpower out of the question, because you have this sort of artificial rule that you've instilled in your own mind. You know, like, I'm only eating potatoes. There's no way around it, and it just gets a lot easier that way because there's really no room for error.
Yeah, you're also reducing stress, because if you're dieting and you're tempted constantly to eat things and you're having to constantly use willpower, you're this high level of stress and tension throughout the week or the weeks or whatever. If you're just eating one thing, there's nothing to stress about. You're just
Exactly.
just go on with what you're doing. Yeah.
Yep. Totally.
Is there any truth to this? This is the idea that popped in my head. Like if you reduce down to just potatoes for a week, is your digestive system kind of working on like a forced adaptation where there aren't any other sources of nutrients coming in, so it's trying to extract as much as possible from the one type of food that you are eating, and in that way it's almost kind of kicked into overdrive to try to fully get every type of calorie or nutrient or whatever it is from that source, as opposed to being able to pull those nutrients from a myriad of different foods.
You know, I haven't ever read anything to that effect, but it wouldn't surprise me if your digestive system can adapt. Because I know it does adapt. Obviously, it adapts to all these different foods coming in. It, you know, changes the pH based on what kind of stuff it has to break down. So it's probably in many respects less work for your digestive system to just handle this one thing coming in. And so it probably does get, you know, you're kind of training your gut for a week to just get really good at making the most of this single food coming in. So you get really efficient. And yeah, I think there's something to that.
If you had to break, you mentioned it before, but just for anybody listening, so like just to round it out, give us like the 3 or 4 rules for this diet if you want to go on it. Just a quick overview.
Okay. Okay. So the first rule is just eat white potatoes, which are, you know, things like Yukon Gold, russet red potatoes, just, you know, your standard potato that you make into mashed or fries, that kind. You cook it with, you can boil them or bake them. I would do 5 to 10 pounds at a time, just so you bake a bunch or boil a bunch all at once, so that and then you stick them in the fridge, and you have access to them whenever you're hungry. So you're not, you know, baking a potato every time you get hungry. You just have it all done. And then when you actually eat it, you can add salt, mustard, hot sauce, vinegar, barbecue sauce, as long as it's, you know, low sugar barbecue sauce. And what I recommend is eventually, if you're just eating cold potatoes out of the fridge, you know, with some salt, eventually you're going to just get really sick of them, and you're going to end up eating too few potatoes, and you can run into some issues if you're not eating enough. So what I do is I have a bottle of spray coconut oil from Trader Joe's, and I just get a cast iron pan really hot. I cut my cooked potatoes into French fry shape. I spray them with the coconut oil with just a tiny bit, you know, probably no more than a 1/4 teaspoon. I salt them, and then I just sear them in the hot cast iron pan so they get crispy on all the edges. And then you can dip those in mustard. So that's a really good way to make the potatoes taste a little better and get more in without really affecting the effectiveness of the diet. You know, you're not adding a lot of fat. As far as and that's it. You just eat potatoes, and you just eat them as neat without adding extra. You can have non-work drinks like coffee or tea. You know, I still have a little bit of cream or milk in me just because I like that. It doesn't make a big difference. But, you know, don't go drinking, you know, milkshakes or, you know, lattes or anything like that. And that's essentially it. As far as the non-diet part, you want to maintain activity levels. You want to be lifting weights through, because that will help maintain that.
Yeah, you got into all like the meat of what you were talking about, and it was all
There's
like,
no meat. There's no meat. It was all potato.
oh right, you got into the heart of the potato, and it all just fell apart from there. Well, hopefully he can get on the gym Wi-Fi, and it'll be better than the cell phone service in his area.
So you're not on the potato diet, Keith?
No, I can't afford to lose any weight. That would just be bad for me. So I'm not on the potato diet. I commented on Twitter that I'm very much in the potato diet spirit, but not in action, just because I don't have a lot of body fat to lose, so I wouldn't want to put myself in that position.
Do you eat a lot of potatoes normally?
I do, yeah. I enjoy potatoes, but I'm just enjoying them with a bunch of other stuff too. But yeah, I'm a big potato guy. It is ancestrally aligned with me, being that my background is Polish, which they eat a lot of potatoes, and then my mom's side is Irish, so obviously that's very potato heavy.
Yeah, potato running through your blood.
Pretty much, yeah. It's just potato juice. Um, that's it. In the winter, it turns into mashed potatoes, but kind of runny though.
If you think about the traditional diet, then if they're eating potatoes all week, and then you have, say, the Sunday roast. So like you were saying about the potato, because you're only eating one thing, your body deals with it differently because it's only getting the one thing. And then if there's like the Sunday roast and you just eat everything on this chicken or whatever, and you would have that rhythm through your life of your eating. So your body's used to dealing with the one thing all the time, and then just every other part of an animal once a week. That kind of overall balance between the two things is probably doing something that most modern people aren't getting either.
Yeah, I would. I don't know exactly what it would be. I mean, like in my mind, just like logically, it seems like it would be if you're just doing the potatoes and then you introduce like some type of animal protein. Um, you just get a whole different nutrient profile that like can maybe sustain you for the rest of the week until the next one. But I really don't know the the truth behind that or the science behind it.
I think you asked me for the basic overview.
Yeah, just a general overview of the potato diet. Like whatever major 3 or 4 points that it obviously is pretty simple, but anybody listening can write those down or listen back to it and just say, okay, that's basically what I need to do to drop 5 pounds this week or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll do it. So yeah, it's real simple. You just eat nothing but white potatoes, meaning Yukon Gold, red potatoes, russet, just your standard potato. You eat it with, you can add salt, mustard, vinegar, hot sauce, anything low or non-calorie, any kind of condiment that doesn't add fat or sugar. You can have non-caloric drinks like coffee and tea. You can have a little bit of cream or milk in the coffee, but if you do too much, it'll just slow down your progress. And what I recommend people do is buy big bags of potatoes and cook them all at once. Bake or boil them in 5 to 10 pound increments. And then once they're baked, you just stick them in the fridge and keep them there for whenever you get hungry, you can grab one and cook it or eat it cold. Now, some people, the diet is actually so effective that you'll run into issues eating enough potatoes. You'll get so full that you won't want any more. So what I do in these cases is I'll take the cooked potato from the fridge. I'll cut it into a French fry shape. And then you spray it with a little bit of coconut oil, no more than a 1/4 teaspoon. Most stores now you can buy spray coconut oil. You just spray it, heat it up in a hot cast iron pan until it's crispy on all sides. And then you sprinkle it with a bunch of salt and dip it in mustard or hot sauce and eat it like that. So that's usually how I eat my potatoes, in that form, because the coconut oil is really good. It doesn't, it allows you to still burn the carbs without impeding fat loss. And you're not adding enough to make any difference at all. You're only adding a tiny bit with each meal.
but psychologically it's enough to make you not get sick of them too soon, so that you still eat enough food during the week.
Yep, exactly. Because what people will do is they'll just try to eat, plain baked potatoes with nothing on them. And eventually they get so sick of them that they either give up on the diet or they just struggle through it. And with low energy levels, depressed thyroid, low metabolism. And what you want is to eat as much as you can, because even if you eat as much as you can, you're not going to eat enough to not lose weight.
Yeah. One other point that I've seen you mention before, and maybe you could just give a little bit of detail on it, is to be sure that you're adding salt to the potatoes.
Yes. The salt is very important. Potatoes are some of the highest foods in potassium, and you want a balance between your sodium and potassium intakes. Most people in typical Western diets don't get enough potassium. They probably get too much sodium with too little potassium, but the potato diet is kind of the opposite. You can run into electrolyte issues and energy issues, even cramping, if you eat too much potassium and too little sodium. So make sure you salt those potatoes to taste. Salt them heavily.
Eric, do you want to tell or just share with everyone kind of the group that you created around this? And for anybody listening, they could join it.
Yeah. We have a Telegram group. It's called Potato Diet, and it's essentially, I think we have about almost 80 people in there now that are doing the potato diet, asking questions, learning about it. And again, it's a simple diet, so there's not a lot to learn, but it's a good place to go if you want to just try it and see that other people are doing this crazy diet just like you.
How did you find out about this, Eric?
I read an article, actually a blog post, a long time ago, maybe 10 years ago. And it was an interview of a guy. He was some sort of agricultural researcher. I think he was even affiliated with the Idaho Potato Association. So, he was not without his bias, but he wanted to show that you could eat the potato and only the potato and still have a sort of a healthy, make that a healthy diet. And so he did it for 2 months. He was just a typical guy, typical academic, not in great shape. And he ended up losing 25 pounds, and he improved pretty much all of his metabolic markers, his blood glucose. He had some diabetes in his family, and his blood sugar control improved greatly. He improved his blood lipids. It wasn't just losing body weight, it was losing a lot of body fat, which is really important, really, really key, because when you talk about weight loss, what kind of weight do you want to lose? You want to lose fat or do you want to lose muscle? This guy was mostly losing fat. So that caught my eye. And ever since, I've been just, if I ever feel like I need to lean out a little bit, I'll just hop on this diet for, 5 to 7 days, and it works every time. Yeah. So that showed me that it was, you could do it and stay healthy. That was kind of cool to see. And there are lots of other, I think there's one guy that sort of made this his whole thing, and I think he released a diet book about the potato diet. So there are a lot of people who have piggybacked off this and made it their own, and it's kind of cool. Yeah.
Have you ever seen someone have a like a poor experience from it, or no?
So everyone I've ever introduced it to has lost weight with it successfully. Some people have issues with digestion, like they have issues in the bathroom with it. And I think usually the problem is they're not eating enough salt, because salt is a really big, is a really good regulator of your metabolic rate, your ability to process, to basically make your body function well. And digestion is very reliant on metabolic health. Yeah. But yeah, that's the only issue I've ever seen. And it was fixed by just eating more salt and drinking more water. So Yeah, it's a good, I think it's worth a try for anyone who just wants to learn something about their body and maybe lose
How
some
does
weight.
someone join the group? Contact you on Twitter and
Yeah,
tell them.
I mean, we could post the Telegram group link in the show notes.
Yeah.
And whenever we post the episode, we can include that in there too. Yeah.
So this is the group will be like an ongoing thing, people doing it at different times. It's not just like a one-off event.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it open. And people are going to be kind of filtering in and out at different times. So they'll be at different stages of the potato diet. So I'll stay pretty active in there, helping people, because I think it's just a cool thing to do, and it's totally free. And I may do some later experiments in there with variations on the potato diet. Like how if you want to maintain that as the base of your diet, but introduce other foods. I was thinking about maybe doing an Irish diet trial where it's potatoes, dairy, and maybe some shellfish as basically the foundation of the diet. I think that could work pretty well too, especially if you're going to be lifting and staying really active. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So people can obviously search out that Telegram group. We'll post a link, and or just go right to the source. Go to Eric, and I'm sure he'll be happy to share the link with you.
I will.
Yeah. So yeah, I was telling you your connection got lost for a second, Eric, but I was telling Kevin how I'm totally with the potato people in spirit, but not in action this week. So I fully support everything you're doing here, and I hope people it'd be a fun thing if you could total up at the end of the week like the collective weight that everybody lost. So if it's you have 80 people, and I'm bad at mental math, but say out of the 80 people, maybe like 30 are actually doing it and 50 are just watching. 30 times 5 is 150 pounds. So that'd be pretty cool to lose 150 pounds collectively over the week, or whatever it may be, but just to find the results if people are willing to share it.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, people haven't been sharing too much about that, but I think they're still in the middle of it. So at the end, I think we'll get some good results.
Yeah. You said yourself you're already down a little bit of weight, right?
Yeah, I'm down about 5 pounds. Been on it since Sunday. So 3 days. Yeah. 3.5 days.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've been maintaining my normal, I've been exercising, lifting weights, working, and I haven't really taken a hit in any of my performance measures. So I'm pretty happy with it.
Cool. Yeah, it's all it's good stuff. It is something a little bit strange, but I think that's why people are drawn to it, because it's a little out there, and it works, and hopefully it seems like you're benefiting some people with it, losing some weight, and it's all good stuff.
I think so.
Yeah, I think one of the other things you mentioned this week was something about shaping your environment. So I don't know if you had any thoughts on that you wanted to bring up, just to get us kicked off, or kick it off, not kicked off.
Well, I mean, I kind of alluded to it when I was talking about the potato diet, because ultimately the reason why the potato diet and any other restrictive diet like this works is because you're constraining your choices. So you still have freedom, but freedom within a narrow range. And I think if you look at the problems that we face in our modern age, a lot of it comes down to, an discordance with our evolutionary past, whether it's diets we eat, the artificial light we're exposed to, all the very novel inputs that we're constantly faced with. And if you look at most of the successful diets or lifestyle changes, it's all about changing your immediate environment. It's about, turning the lights down at night. It's, getting outside. So changing your immediate environment, getting outside in the sun, getting into nature. And I think almost, as a parent, I realize that that's a big part of my job as a parent, is to create a healthy, nourishing, and still exciting and freedom-giving environment for my kids. And it's just sort of I guess it's something I keep coming back to when I'm thinking about how to stay healthy, how to be healthy. It always comes down to controlling your environment, because that changes how your genes will express themselves. And so that's essentially where I was thinking about it. I was wondering if you guys have any input on that.
Yeah, I was thinking a little bit slightly different in terms of like shaping your environment is just, and this is kind of a riff off of a tweet I saw the other day too, and I forgive me for not remembering who wrote it, but there's so many decisions to be made today, or maybe it was in a podcast that I heard it, but if you can lower the number of decisions that you have to make, that's going to make your life a little bit easier. So the potato diet is a good example. I mean, you don't have to be on the potato diet to do it, but if you started the week and you put 10 pounds of potatoes in the oven and roasted them and then just kept them in the refrigerator, and then every time you got hungry or wanted a snack, grabbed one of those, as opposed to a bag of chips or any other type of snack food that's not really good for you. That's a way of shaping your environment that you've already front loaded the decision. So you say, every time I'm hungry this week, I go and have a potato instead of a handful of trail mix or whatever it may be. So I was thinking about that. I know some people, they put like a pull-up bar in their doorway, and that's just, you have physically changed your environment. You say, every time I walk past here, I do 3 pull-ups or 5 pull-ups or something.
Mm-hmm.
Those are just ways of, you've already made the decision for yourself, and now it's just like, when you get the reminder, you act on it. So the little signal to do something.
It's almost like a little rule that you set for yourself, that, you walk by the pull-up bar, you do one. And it's, I often talk about artificial rules, like, they're all made up, but you can kind of, you can kind of trick yourself into making it an immutable law of reality. You're like, no, every time I pass by, I must do it. Mm-hmm. And if you actually believe that, if you actually live that, then it becomes a rule, and you can make some really good changes. When we were on that trip in Hawaii, it was kind of like, we didn't have to keep carrying that rock or that huge log, but we had made an artificial law. We'd changed the environment, the environment of the social environment, and it became something that you just had to do. There was no other option. I think that's something that humans can do. It's kind of weird about us. We can kind of create different worlds. We can create laws out of thin air, and yet that don't have any. They're rather arbitrary, but we can still stick to them, and they can feel very real. I think that's kind of a cool feature.
Yeah, it's like you have multiple selves. So you have your executive function self. And this is probably, Kevin, this is like exactly what you talk about all the time, giving yourself rules and abiding by those rules mm-hmm. in certain situations and all that.
Totally. Yeah.
So you have your executive self. You said, okay, I'm going to make this decision. That's the rule for this situation. And then you have your, subservient self, or for lack of a better term, and they just have to carry out what the executive self already decided on. So it's giving, it's a weird thing, but you're giving permission or authority you're granting authority to one portion of yourself so that the other portion of yourself follows through on it, and both your whole being benefits from it.
Yep.
Yeah, you have to learn to both command and obey yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they're not the same at all. I like the analogy of a rider and a horse. So like the rider is the one doing the guiding and has the plan and sort of high level big picture, but he needs the horse, and the horse works better if it's doing things according to the plan and it's reliable. But the rider needs to be able to switch things around and change things sometimes. So he needs to be alert to make changes, let things go according to plan, and then make a little tweak here and there. But you need both of them, and they're kind of like a higher levels, but dependent on each other. And with your environment, it's so like if you take the example of the pull-up, so you put the pull-up bar, okay, I'm going to do pull-ups every day when I walk under this. So you remember for the first few days, maybe a few weeks, then you stop, and then the pull-up bar just gets put out of your awareness. So like you just walk past it, underneath it, and you don't notice it anymore. It's just become part of your sort of habituated subconscious environment. So then you have to do other little tricks where you maybe like hang a piece of string or something that you'll walk into it to remind you to do it, and then you start doing it again. Then that will go away. You have to make these little changes to trick yourself all the time.
Yeah.
To me, that's like the rider changing the route, or just making little tweaks here and there. But really, the impulse to do it is you're training the horse to want to do it by itself. You're training yourself. You just find yourself reaching for the bar rather than having to tell yourself.
Yeah.
And obviously, for different people, it's different, and different activities, it's a different amount of time and repetition before you do it. And sometimes some things you need to do repeatedly every day. Other things you don't. You just need to have some kind of routine where it fits into some other bigger environment. So like you go this place on a Sunday, so you always do this one thing on Sunday because it's there anyway. Or like me just now, it's random nice weather. So as soon as the sun comes out one day out of every 3 or 4, I go running that day. Like you don't need to think about it. You just react into the environment. So like you can intelligently change your environment as you go, as well as just have it as like impacting you passively. But like like when I hurt my back a while ago, I just put like a mat on the floor between the chair that I would normally have sat on. I just put a mat on the floor that I literally had to step on to go to the chair. So I remembered to sit down on the floor rather than go to the chair. That's just like, you can do those little tricks. I mean, if you were going to really change the environment, you just throw out all the couches and the stupid stuff and just have places to sit on the floor or whatever. You don't have to do that, obviously. But and another thing I was thinking about environments is, people say this thing about your net worth is the average of the 5 people you hang around with most, or you become most like the 5 people you see most, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You become like the environment's not the habitat that you're in most. You become more like it. If you're out, if you spend a lot of time at Pi, you feel different. You act differently. Your awareness is different. If you spend a lot of time with big heights and you're looking at into the distance or whatever, or you're in the sea a lot, or you're obviously going through woods or any of these things, your technology is your habitat. If you're on the computer and then the phone and then you're doing all this stuff, you'll become like those things. So you need to also think about the environments that you go to that aren't, and how often you go to them, not just the one in your house. So it just comes back to, are you living in this simulated world where you forget that you're an animal on a planet flying around a star? Or do you remember who and what you are and do things suited to you?
Yeah, and in the same respect, like I think we talked about it last week too. I may have talked about it, but you feel yourself you're too locked into your habitat, using the word you just did, and you follow certain behaviors. But if you change where you are, like your physical location, it does something psychologically where it does open you up to new behaviors, new actions, especially if it's a new place you've never been before. It's you have more, you don't have a pattern that you've already fallen into, so you can experiment a bit more. And really, if something's not going right, you could change it and test things out in a new environment. And so I guess to bring that back to the point, like shaping your environment is also moving your physical location, and the two things are linked between your mental headspace and your physical space that you're in.
Exactly. Like if somebody does fitness training in the way that you teach, Keith, they're going to be using the things around them, like the terrain and the just the place they live is going to be important to the things they do. So that's literally the environment shaping your body based. You might be doing a completely different thing in one part of the world than you are here, where you are at that time, and you're being. You have agency and you're choosing to do things, but you're being shaped by the environment because your options have been limited to trail running or whatever it is you do in this place. And you have to intelligently put yourself in the place that will shape you the way you want to be shaped. But it might shape you in a way that you don't know, you don't expect, or that you don't really like. And then you just simply have to go something like, if it's summer, you don't get enough sunshine, there's no way around that. You have to go move somewhere that you get more sun. Mm-hmm. So there's some things you can't really do.
Yeah.
But the psychological thing's huge. I mean, just a few days in staying in the mountains, I was in a completely different conscious awareness than before I went and when I came back. Obviously, I was in Cyprus, so like there was a big drop in heat going to the mountains. So there's that as well, but it wasn't just that. It was your mind changes because you're seeing things, your physical perspective changes, and then all your mental perspectives change. And things really do seem smaller that seemed a big deal before. And it seems relevant that you're seeing this huge, big open space and you're higher up and things are small in the distance. And now the things that down there bothered you are now smaller, metaphorically and physically and literally. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it's all linked. Like that's the name of this podcast is Psychophysical. It's all the psychological is always linked to the physical in some respect. The other idea that just popped in my mind is the more you actively shape your environment, you putting the pull-up bar in your doorway that you walk through and doing it every time, it creates a positive feedback loop when you notice yourself doing that, because you feel more powerful and you have more agency. You're like, I'm doing things, I'm actually changing things in my life, and it's creating better behaviors and I'm getting better outcomes, and I'm doing that myself. It's not a reactive thing, like someone's put a rule on me, or I guess you're putting a rule on you, but it's by choice that you're going ahead and progressing in all those things. And it's not some other outside authority telling you what to do, when to do it, and all that. So I think there's a big benefit in actually going out and making a decision to change your environment or something along those lines. And you actually feel more powerful when you do so. I mean, it's a very human thing, right? To change the environment. So it benefits us. We're doing it all the time. And I think there's a lot of power in that, and you start doing it in little ways, and it snowballs into something bigger and bigger over time.
Yeah, I think there's a hidden cost to not changing your environment, to just going with the flow, to doing what others tell you to do, or what the normal way of doing things is. I think there's a hidden toll that people probably don't even notice they're paying, but it becomes evident when you start making those choices and altering your environment. You realize, you feel that power, and you realize, oh, that's what I was missing. And that power it's not like an additive thing. That's normal, to change environment is the normal state of man. And so I think when people aren't doing it, they're actually they're going backwards.
Stasis is slow erosion.
Yep.
Yeah, you get what I mean. So yeah, if you stick in one spot, you're like, it may not be detectable, but you're actually just slowly eroding into the place, or whatever it is, becoming less of yourself and more of the place. So by changing yourself, renewing yourself, making better decisions, changing your environment, be like an active player in your own life. You're making you're renewing yourself always.
And they've done this with rats and experiments, young rats, that if the environment's too boring and too uniform, their neurons stop growing. There has to be some level of novelty all the time of enrichment of the environment, or they just don't grow properly. And obviously we're the same, but even more complex version of that.
Those same rats also are more easily addicted to sugar and cocaine and stuff like that, when they have the unenriched environment.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So that's a way of injecting novelty, like a big rush of dopamine, whether it's caused by something you actually did or just some chemical you injected. You're going to get it some way. It's going to happen.
Yeah, a lot of the problem, the way people don't, you said, Eric, that it's like there's a hidden cost to not changing your environment that people don't realize. I think a lot of that is to do with, it's just this modern idea that we just kind of assume that you are separate. You're like an atom in the universe. You're separate from everything else. And then you just go around and you're kind of the same wherever you go and kind of do your thing in this place, but really aren't. You are part of you. It really literally is what is around you at that moment. It's just the fact of the matter. It's not being poetic. It's just the way it is. So you go somewhere else, that's now interacting with you, and part of you, what you're aware of, is what's around you. And I would classify what you're aware of as you. Obviously we're getting philosophical, but if you have that kind of mentality, then somebody will sit in the same place for years and be depressed and hate where they are and hate all these things, and not realize that a lot of that would just change by going somewhere else. It might not, they might be the problem. It depends. But for a lot of people, they've just go on holiday and they're a different person for a week. And then they come back, it lasts for 3 days, and then they just go back, they just flip back. But that should tell people something. They're not imagining that. They were a different person on holiday.
Yeah. I think people think that you're sort of that vacations are a lie, but I think that actually reveals a lot about your true self. That's how you should be. You should be happy and engaged and excited and interested in everything. I think that's the way most people are deep down. And I think, vacation or holidays, you guys say, I think it reveals that.
Yeah, it's interesting, the different words, actually, because vacation is always seems strange to me. You're vacating.
Do you use that word at all? Is that
really? No. We use holiday almost always.
Holiday to us is like Christmas and New Year's, Thanksgiving, July.
Yeah.
Eric, I think you had mentioned something on Twitter, some study about like the more natural state of man was to be kind of like happy, fulfilled, and to not be that as an aberration from like what you're truly meant to be. Am I making this up or no?
No, that sounds familiar. Let me see. Oh yeah. Okay. What was it? Oh yeah, there was some study showing that positive feelings, things like love, joy, happiness, contentment, those have never been shown to arouse much activation of the nervous system, whereas the negative feelings like fear or sadness or hate, those things really get the nervous system activated, and you see a corresponding alterations in neurotransmitters and hormones. And so to me, that suggests that the default state of humans is kind of happiness and pleasant feelings and contentment. But I think we have the idea that that's not. And, I guess for many people, that is the reality. The reality is that that's not normal. But that was interesting to me. I think it just shows what you should really value, and how much credence you should give to negative things in your life, which isn't much.
I wonder if that's connected to why people feel joyful when there's some kind of struggle that they're winning through, because you're integrating the kind of blissful natural state, maybe, whether you can think of this as the baby in the womb if someone wants, or they can be more mystical about it. But and then the world, and then there's all these frustrations and anger and hate and fear and all that stuff. And then if you're struggling through something, you're kind of you're working with all those things that are in existence, but it's bringing you together as a whole in some way, so that you're more back to this blissful state, but as a human being in the reality of the world, other than a baby in the womb. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I remember, I've read a fair amount of, anthropologists who spent time with some tribe or another in the Amazon or, in Africa or something. And one thing they always remark on, and this is not to idealize the, hunter-gatherers or, pre-literate primitive people, but they always make a point to say how much they laugh, like they're kind of always laughing. Almost like children laugh now, because I think they're a little more, they're before the weight of the world collapses under their shoulders. Kids laugh a lot, and I think so. I think that gives you an insight into what humans should ideally be like, and that's playful, childlike, laughing. And again, that's not to paint over all the issues that a lot of these tribal peoples have, whether it's infanticide or violence. That stuff's all very real too. But I think that always opened my eyes, made me wonder.
A lot of the rule making instinct in people, and the making constraints, and like, what do you call them, artificial rules that people give themselves, is a lot of that comes out of play, being childlike and playful. Because a game, what's a game? It's artificial rules. You don't need to have the rule that you can't walk on the cracks in the pavement or whatever. You're giving yourself that, and you're now the rule has changed, so now you work around the rule. And that's like that kind of shaping, kind of forming instinct of humans, which people are just realizing is working back on them just as much as they're working on it.
Yep. Thank you.
I think an important point here also is that a lot of if you're not making those rules for yourself, like even though they may be arbitrary, there's still rules getting placed on you and you don't even realize it. And you think things have to be a certain way, or you just do things a certain way out of default. So my point is that, like, you either choose these things that you want to live your life by, or they're getting chosen for you just by the default way of being, or whatever. And it could even be like other people just making the decision for you if you don't want to make it for yourself. Not saying that's the case in all situations, but to have more agency is to make some type of rule decision for yourself, that you're going to be a certain way, you're going to eat a certain way, move a certain way, tell the language that you use in your own head. All those things are important, and if you don't take control of that, there are other forces at work that will gladly control that for you.
And who cares more? Who cares more about you or the other forces? That's one thing you should always ask yourself.
But sometimes it's your own rules that you made a long time ago that are now just an autopilot that you're not even aware of, or you don't question. They just happen by the rules. Just happen by themselves. Sometimes they're kind of rules. They're like ways of reacting, or like
patterns of behavior.
Sorry.
Patterns of behavior.
Yeah, they're just kind of happening by themselves. Sometimes it's kind of fuzzy. You've not really decided to do it that way, but that's the way you're doing it. And then sometimes it's just as simple as looking at it clearly and going, "Oh, I'm doing that thing. I should do this other thing now. So if that happens, I'll do this thing next time." And then just by being clear about it, using words in your own head, and then the next minute you find yourself doing the different thing in that situation. It just required being brought into the light rather than it being automated, because a lot of them, you didn't sit down and decide a rule verbally in your head. find yourself, you notice the pattern, and then you change the pattern using your words, like using words as a tool. Because to have rules, you need words. You need to, there needs to be some kind of logic. If this, that,
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. It isn't necessarily, there's no like thing imposing it on you, but just your lack of awareness means that there is some unspoken, unrecognized rule that you may be just pattern that you've had for yourself, that it can change, and it can you can improve if you do change it consciously.
And rules can make you more creative. It sounds like you're being restricted. If you're deliberately restricting yourself, you have to now really think hard to get round to make something work within those rules, and you're forced to come up with something you might not have if it's too easy. So, like, an example I like is, I think it's in Nietzsche, but I'm not sure. And he says something like the poet, like the rules of poetry, having the hard constraint, the fixed constraints in poetry, where there was a specific structure and rhymes and all this other rules, made them far more creative, because they were having to overcome the rule, like overcome themselves within the rules to come up with new ideas. And and you could argue that a lot of the poetry and the more free form stuff that came later just isn't as good. You would think it would be more creative because there's not as many rules, but it doesn't work like that, because the person's not forced, so they can use lower quality things. We'll get through.
It's like reading Homer or some modern slam poet.
Right, exactly.
There's no comparison. Yeah,
and like some of the most interesting translations of things is where the translator will give themselves some kind of rule that they're going to translate in this way, and it's really restrictive, and some parts of it don't really work like that, but it's a new way of saying it, then it can be quite different from another translation just by the rule they had at the start. And kids naturally love all that kind of stuff. Kids love rhymes, love, it's all really part of the one thing.
What do you think about language itself? Language is a set of rules, imagine if, like, can you be more creative with English or just gibberish? Like making up random things to say. Like you wouldn't be creative at all. You'd just be speaking gibberish.
Exactly. Like a dance. You can do anything you want. It's
just flailing and throwing your body around.
But often, if you put people together in some situation where they can do anything they want, you'll find that they organize themselves into some kind of rules or pattern by itself, because this is what we do. So everything does, really.
Yeah, humans are structure creating beings. They do. It's the same thing I mentioned before. Like, you'll naturally shape your own environment. I have a good, like, concrete example of this. So one of the things, like, obviously I shared these videos of what I do online and stuff, and I had someone DM me on Instagram, and he's like, I like what you do, and it seems very improvised, and I kind of want to do more of what you do, but how do I do that? And I said, well, yeah, a lot of what I do is very improvised, but I asked him, like, what do you just mainly do body weight stuff, or you have equipment or something like that? And he's like, I like doing body weight stuff, but I also have a kettlebell, a plyo box, gymnastics rings, and I don't know, some other stuff. And I said, you know what, for each workout, pick 3 things, say, pick like one movement and 2 of your pieces of equipment, and then cycle through them. So, like, the first day you'll pick push-ups, the plyo box, and your jump rope. And you start with a standard push-up on the first round, standard whatever set of jump ropes, and then like jumps onto the plyo box. And then the next round you switched up, like a different style of push-up. You do a Spider-Man push-up this time, and then a single leg jump rope, and then like a step up onto the plyo box. So it's still creative, because you have to think up a variation of these things each time. And but you you give yourself those constraints, those rules, and that allows you to progress forward and do these things. So that just shows the importance of having, you need a little bit of structure in it. It's that you have to have the order with the chaos. And it was just a concrete example of this idea we've been talking about.
I think that's what you've got totally sassed, Keith, is with your stuff, because it looked like that guy says, oh, it looks really improvised, like you're doing all this random stuff all over the place. But actually, as you're saying, you have really sort of tight, specific rules and constraints each time. It's that way of going about using rules is what makes it so creative and diverse, and you're doing all the different things at different times. They're not, they're like, it's the same thing. They're not opposites. It just seems like opposites because of the way modern world is set up. Because you're used to this kind of industrial things coming at you with all the rules set up, and you just have to obey. And you're not really encouraged to not obey or to start commanding. Certainly not other people, but it's not even yourself. You're not expected to. But again, that's just, to me, that's just like the child wants to, they have the Lego and they're like, try these 3 bits over here like this. What do they do? Okay, try this 4 bits over here. It's the same process that anyone can do. They just let themselves. So what are some other ways you can constrain your environment to improve your life?
One would be the foods that you allow yourself to buy. So if you only allow yourself to buy certain foods, only keep certain food in the house, you just, by default, like I said before, you've made that decision for you about what you're already going to eat. It's just a matter of preparing it.
Yeah, if you don't buy junk food, you're not going to eat it. It's not going to be an option. It's not going to be in the fridge or the pantry. Yeah, it's very simple.
Like people, like if you have like an office job or something like that, just shaping your environment. People got stand-up desks or different types of chairs, or like those are physical objects that you could incorporate that just maybe encourage a little bit more movement and all that. I've even seen mats that you're supposed to stand on barefoot, and I may have brought this up before, I forget, but it's like it mimics like a rock, standing on rocks.
I have one of them.
Yeah, so that's another way. Like normally you're always on flat surfaces or hardwood or carpet or whatever it is, but if you use that in front of your standing desk, then that's encouraging a little bit more your body to experience a little bit more of what it would in a natural environment. And that's just something that you could do to shape it. Yeah, what do you guys think?
Well, another one that's not so easy for everyone to do all the time, but is if you're able to be selecting where you're going to live or stay for a while, is to be strategic about where it is. So obviously you want to live somewhere with the things you want to do or whatever, but just things like, because I notice when I live here, I don't live on the coast. I live it's like 20 minutes walk from the coast, and that's way better for me than living on the coast, because I'm not there and I have this urge to get to the sea and I have to walk or run. So I'm like, it's built into to go and do something at the shore now. It's built in. I'm going to run there. It's up and downhill, so it's like the environment is now, that's built into it. I don't need to think about it. I just do it. Whereas if you're there all the time, you maybe not do it like that, or you maybe do it in a different way. And obviously for other people is walking distance to a gym is better for some people than having to drive, because they're just not going to do it that way. Or home gym's good for some people, but not others, because that environment isn't good for people to have it at home. They need to have the thing where they go and do it and come back, or they won't do it. So it really, obviously, it depends on the person. Depends on their current environment, because they maybe want to get away from the people that they're with to go and do the thing, or they may want to stay where they are if they're like stay-home parent or whatever. They may have to do it based on their environment. So it's like there's not really a rule. It's more just a way of approaching it that you need, rather than like set rules, do this. You need the rules, but you have to have the rules. Like guys on the internet can't give you the rules for everybody.
Yeah, the key part is you just have to think about it. like you have to put thought into like, what do I want to do? How do I want to be? How do I want to live? And like, you have to think about how changing your life in certain ways or changing your environment or whatever it is, how that leads you more towards that style of life. Yeah, I think it's like not, it's something that's just not going to happen by itself. You have to do something, take action, and make it happen. And that's not necessarily always hard. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's just really small things that drastically improve that. Make your, I know people have mentioned this before, and it's kind of an obvious thing, but like get rid of all screens in your bedroom. So if you get rid of your TV and computer and say, I'm not having, and phone, I'm not having these in the bedroom, you're more likely to sleep better. And that's just something simple that people can do. And you're not tempted to watch something before you go to bed and kind of stay up late when you know sleep's really important to your overall health.
Yeah, one I did recently was delete the Twitter app from my phone, and I went through my, like the ebook apps on my phone. I've got like all these like loads, like all these old books and academic books and stuff, ones you wouldn't buy, but you'll acquire a PDF from somewhere. So I went through all them and I found ones that were like hidden away, and I opened them all up so they were in my most recent openings and stuff. So then every time I got the urge to check Twitter and I felt it and I looked at my phone and then there was no Twitter app. So I've got the phone and I'm looking like the rats with the cocaine pellets, and but there's no Twitter app. And then I'm like, okay, half my brain goes, just download the app, just check it once, it'll be okay. And then the other half goes, no, the rule is no Twitter app. But because I had the book set up, I'll go, fuck it, I've got this urge now for words, because I've realized that with Twitter, it's a craving for little words, little pocket bits of words. It's not just Twitter, it's the words you need. So like, I just open up these, I've got these old books on ancient Greek stuff. And they're ones where every couple of few sentences you stop and think, you're like staring into space, that kind of thing. So they're like tweet length. You wouldn't read like hundreds of pages in a row, but they're kind of tweet length. But it's
like aphorisms.
Yeah, but it's not so much aphorisms. It's just like quite dense. There's a lot in it and big ideas. So you stop and think all the time. So it kind of mimics the jumping from one thing to another. But it's actually quality thing to read. It's not random tweets. Present company accepted. But most tweets are a waste of time to read. They just are, including my own, obviously. And but that urge, I noticed a lot of the urge for the Twitter's gone away now, just from having the books set up. So I know there's a big debate about which is better books. Obviously, I agree with physical are better. But in this case, I was changing the environment, which was the tech habitat of the phone, and looking at the phone and doing that stuff. Buying physical books is irrelevant to this point, to this environment that I was changing. And that's made a big difference now. I don't crave Twitter at all now. I'm already reading more of physical books too now, because I just did that one little rule. And this is so obvious to people. And, I've no doubt I'll put it back on at some point with some justification. Probably quite soon, but we'll see.
One of you guys earlier said something about, you refer to the simulation, like the simulation of the normal world, how it's not really real. But I think that's when you're changing your environment, you have to realize that you're just creating a new simulation, and it has a bad connotation, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And I think so, like, a lot of what you're doing is you're trying to simulate healthier environments. It's never going to be the real thing. Like switching out your LED bulbs to incandescent lights and putting candles on. It's not quite the same as being outside with a campfire and no artificial light anywhere in the world, but it's good enough, And I think what you did with the tech thing, with taking Twitter off and putting old books on your phone so that you see those first, that's a perfect example of simulating. Like creating a new stimulation in this weird fucked up world that we're in, and I think that's a beautiful way to do it. That's how you got to do it. You have to work with the tools available.
Yeah, one thing I remember from the breath hold program, Erwan mentioned something like whether you realize it or not, you're always in some form of like hypnosis. Like you can, for example, like I think the example he used was like you could drive somewhere miles and miles away and you're not even thinking about driving. You're thinking about what happened that day or a certain situation or whatever, or you're paying attention to a podcast while you're driving, but your body still, like your eyes are still reading the road and all that. So your mind is somewhere else, but you get to the right location without actively thinking about it. Now, the point here is that you have essentially hypnotized yourself in some way to focus on certain things while you're on autopilot and other things. And the way it related to the breath hold program is you could kind of hypnotize yourself into a certain state by just bringing certain thoughts to mind, bringing certain feelings to mind, and your body will react to that. And you could tell yourself certain things and your body will become what you tell it to become. So that I think is a really good example, kind of the same thing. You're changing your mental environment to be the way you want it to be without just by like subtly inviting yourself there, as opposed to I don't know, whatever the natural state would be. So you could change yourself in that regard too.
Another really important piece of changing your environment is involving other people, because when you involve other people, you start to create a culture, and the cultural environment is probably maybe the most powerful of all the human environments. And that's why things like CrossFit are so popular, because you're there and you have like 20 other people and you're all kind of egging each other on and pushing each other, motivating each other. And that's why, let's say the potato diet group is a perfect example also.
Yeah, and we have these kind of we have like these abstract words for this, accountability, but really what it means is you've changed an environment. So part of your environment now is people texting, did you do such and such, or where are you with this? Or it's now things are coming at you that's different now. It's much more physical in a way, it's much more the things going on around you are different now, whether it's simulated like a text message or whether it's someone rolls their eyes when they see you. You said you're going to stop drinking and then they see you drinking and they're like, oh yeah, you did it again. That's environment.
Yep.
Yeah.
Those are all, that's why it's really important to keep good friends and support group and all that. I mean, that's another reason, like you said, location, Kevin, but a lot of people keep their location because they have it's maybe not like, not the best climate or anything like that, but just because you have a group of people around you that's really supportive and all that, just locally, that you could go and see and all that. That's maybe one of the biggest factors in leading a healthy life, is having good social circles, good relationships and all that. So
yeah, there's plenty of people that have gone to live, who've gone to live in the woods and in the cabin to write their book and just couldn't do anything at all because they were totally taken out of the environment that they actually needed to stimulate them to be creative in the first place. They just they may have been okay if a bunch of them were in the woods, but it's more complex. Like Eric's saying about your social environment's the big thing. Whether you believe it or not, it's you're being affected by the people around you all the time, even when the ones aren't there. Even people who are dead, people are behaving in certain ways according to people who aren't even alive anymore, not rules that they've given themselves.
Yeah. All right, cool. What do you guys think is a pretty good place to end on today?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, good luck with the potato diet, the potato people.
Yeah. Thank you. You should join us.
Yeah,
The potatoes in
everybody's
Cyprus are
talking
pretty good, by
potatoes.
the way. Those are the best potatoes I've had. The ones here are really nice.
What makes them special?
I don't know. I think it's the soil. The soil's really red, and they just taste amazing. You don't like. I'm used to the sort of bland potatoes in the UK where you're going to have sauce or something on the chips. If you're having chips, fries. So you're going to have something with your fries. The ones here you don't need anything. They taste amazing on their own. Amazing. It's hard to explain.
No, I noticed that. I've been getting them from the farmer's market. I stocked up this weekend, and then I ran out, and now I'm back to the store-bought ones, and it's just not the same.
Yeah.
Like the farmer's market ones are denser. They're actually heavier. You take a store-bought, and you weigh it against a farmer's market one. Same size, but it's denser. It's heavier. I think there's
Maybe
just more in it.
Is it? You think it's fresher, and like if a potato's been sitting out a while, maybe it loses a bit of like the moisture or whatever that's in it?
That's probably part of it. But I noticed that in general with produce from the farmer's market. Whether it's squash or whatever, they're just heavier. They have more flavor. Yeah. Because if it was just moisture, you'd think as it lost moisture, it would intensify the flavor, but that doesn't seem to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right. So everybody join the potato diet group and start making decisions about your environment and set your own rules. Be a good authority over your own life and
choose agency.
And increase agency. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, we are going to have some awesome psychos. We are just shaping people's lives, improving them drastically. And I'm glad as everybody listens to this has joined our tribe, our cult tribe.
We've reduced their grocery bills. We've saved people money. We've done it for at least 7 days. So
people are losing weight. They're getting healthier. Yeah.
Taking trips to tropical islands. Yeah, everything.
Yeah. Goddamn, we are doing God's work, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So,
thank you guys. Keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, appreciate it. And to all those psychos out there, we appreciate you listening.